Behind every door, around every corner, down every staircase, you just might find a hidden treasure.
The building was built between 1828 and 1831, and it used to house a tavern or restaurant, as well as hotel rooms, and a lock house, which they used to tend the lock that's right outside, Lock 20 on the C&O Canal, and a kitchen. There are 3 rooms to the visitor center. So the first room we have set up sort of like an old-fashioned tavern. And inside there's everything is on tables. We have a model of a lock. We have a model of a boat. We have some common smells that you might have smelled in the tavern, as well as some exhibits on the construction and the design of the canal. And then the center room, we have exhibits that portray different characters, different people that used to live on and work on the canal. So we have a lock tender and his wife. We also have a boat owner and his wife. And together they formed a community. Basically, we are a living museum. So right outside the building is a lock, and that's lock number 20, one of 74 lift locks along the canal. It is a working lock, so we do lock demonstrations, and we also have a canal boat, which people can ride. It's old-fashioned, no motor, it's pulled by mules, and we run it with a seasonal crew, so everybody, all our park rangers are dressed up in period clothing, so you can enjoy about an hour ride. It's just $5 a person, so a very affordable option for people coming out. There was no real sex discrimination on the canal. These were family-run boats. So if you had boys, boys worked, but if you had girls, girls worked. And so you'll see that on our cruise is that whoever is in that particular position that day, that's the job they do. Yeah, our biggest thing is the boat, and really we have a capacity for 60 on the Charles F. Mercer, and it's an old packet boat. So you can rent out the packet boat, you can come as a family and just get a couple of seats, or you can rent out the whole thing. So we do a lot of school groups and a lot of other groups. It's great for seniors. The more kids you have, the more work you got done. You can walk out to the falls. It's an easy, about a half-mile walk out to the actual falls, see the 70-foot waterfall. But then we have tons of hikes. We have the Gold Mine Loop, where you can go up and see an old gold mine. One of the most popular hikes is the Billy Goat Trail. Billy Goat Trail A is one where you're doing some rock scrambling and some climbing. I think the best part is going back and living the 1870s, is that most of our crew, we portray the 1870s and what we wear, but thinking about what life was like, it really wasn't that different. You still had families trying to stay together, trying to make a living. You still had some of the same issues. So it's kind of neat seeing how the time changes yet stays the same. During the main season, we offer everything from bike rides, even overnight rides on the canal. Remember, it's 184 miles, so you can go quite a bit. But we also offer hikes up to the gold mine, out along some of the trails, as well as historical lock demonstrations, meet the mule programs. There is a $5 admission fee to the park, and you pay that the entrance fee. It's good for everybody in the car. And then there is a $5 per person fee if you want to ride the boats. Beyond that, the museum, the walking, everything else, you're welcome to, it's free. Every bit that we get in from the boat operation goes to feeding the mules, doing vet bills, and running the boat. And we never break even, so we're always looking for donations to keep it going. We have a number of special events that go on throughout the year. Everything from park cleanups to Civil War weekends to our kind of famous Life and Death program in the fall, which is sort of a Halloweenish program, to days that we just do canal days, play old-fashioned games and things like that. We have tons of volunteer opportunities, and you'll see that our park is run by a lot of volunteers. We have volunteers in the visitor center. We have volunteers out on bike patrol, just simply helping people with flat tires and giving people information. Also out on some of our main trails, we use volunteers to help keep people safe and people informed. We do have a great bookshop, so it is all local information, a lot of historical stuff, but also some of the nature stuff. There's a lot of great maps, so books like Little Known Hiking Trails around the greater DC area. A lot of things that are great for locals. We're in everybody's backyard around here, but a lot of people don't really know us. As a Park Service, we don't advertise. So people really need to kind of find us on their own or go to something like this and see us. So we have a lot of people that come by that don't check in the visitor center, that we've had new exhibits within the last year, and that there are some new things going on with some of our trails that we have changed, that I'm hoping that we can reintroduce some people back to certain other areas of the park that they might just take for granted.
In a certain sense, every community museum is special to the people who create it because it's about them and it's about their families. What makes Sandy Spring Museum particularly special, and special to people who didn't grow up here and for whom this is not their roots, is that this museum tells a story about how Maryland becomes a border state, what that means, what the struggle for freedom was for African Americans, what the role of Quakers was in facilitating that change from slavery to freedom. And then beyond that, we tell stories about changes in agriculture, changes in commerce. This area was the breadbasket of Washington, D.C. in the 19th century. The city couldn't have grown and fed itself without the farms of Montgomery County. And we have that story to tell as well. A third thing that makes this place very special is that the rural heritage was active and living right into the 1970s. So these stories are still alive in memory among many people who grew up in this area. So we have a chance to bridge memory and reality in ways that lots and lots of community museums just don't. Sandy Spring Museum has a wide range of different activities and spaces for different activities going on in this building. We have a public space where we have lectures and concerts. We have a library where we do research and maintain our archives. We have the exhibit hall around us where we display our collection. We have an art gallery where we show local artists, for the most part, changes every quarter. We have, of course, administrative offices, and then we have a gorgeous outdoor courtyard. On top of that, in back buildings, we have a display of farm implements, a kind of ersatz log cabin that we use for education, and a working smithy, a working blacksmith forge. We divide our programming between mission-related, mission-direct stuff that has to do with history and education and learning, and community service and outreach, which is sometimes less connected to the history and more connected to just having a good time, getting together, getting to know each other. The main events that we do for history, we do a lecture series. Of course, we have our school programs.
In our summer camp, we have programs that are hands-on, and some of the hands-on programs we have is we do like paper marbling, so children can learn the art of marbling, and then from that, what they used to do is either use that paper to bound books or boxes, and we do a project after the paper's dried, and they go ahead and they make a journal and use the marbled paper for their cover. We also teach children how to do cross-stitching or also basketry. We have baskets that the children make, so we try to give them insight that during their times when they're not in school or doing other programs, that they can learn to use their hands other than always being at the computer.
We've also modified it so that students with disabilities can participate, and also so that it's adapted appropriately for preschool programs as well. We offer school field trips year-round. They are typically $5 per student, and we don't charge for teachers or chaperones. In the summertime, we offer summer camp typically in the months of July. They are available to students. One camp is for students going into grades 1 and 2, and the other camp is for children going into grades 3, 4, and 5. Come President's Day in February, we offer a family fun day, and this is a great day for the whole family to come to the museum. It allows us to highlight to them all the education programs that we offer, and that's free to the public to come in. And we have a lot of demonstrators, live music, a lot of hands-on activities, and lots of things for kids and their parents to explore.
On the community service side, we do a whole range of special activities. The most well-known of which is our Strawberry Festival, which happens the first Saturday in June every summer. We get 4,000 or 5,000 people here, and they eat strawberry shortcake, and they play games, and they jump around in a moon bounce, and they do all kinds of crazy fun things.
The main focus of the education programs here at the museum is to teach especially children about life, how people lived a long time ago without the use of computers and telephones and technology, and that life was able to happen without all those things. So we take field trips from elementary schools and show them, you know, the different ways that the community developed. The adult tours can be arranged here at the museum, and you can have a docent take you around and show you how the community started from when James and Deborah Brooke came to settle here. They were Quakers, and they started with a farm and then built up to our community, which we have today.
We change our exhibits, this particular area we change quite a lot because this is really the only one that we can move things around. Everything that we have is authentic. Nothing is a copy in here at all. Everything in this room comes from probably someone in the area, and if it's not from someone in the area, it's something that could have been in the area.
Each and every one of these sub-exhibits, these small exhibits, has a story that links it to the major narratives that are important about this community. In this one, there are several linkages. The most obvious is that every single rural village had its own country store, and the country stores provided everything that the community needed to buy, everything the community couldn't make for itself. The larger story, though, is that these country stores connected to the development of commerce in Maryland, and commerce within a basically agricultural and overwhelmingly slave-driven tobacco farming state. And this story of northern Maryland and the way it became more like the Mid-Atlantic, more like Baltimore, more like Philadelphia, more like New York, and less like Charleston or Richmond or Savannah, is a terribly important story for Marylanders to understand about their own history. The car is a Sandy Spring artifact. It was driven on the roads of Sandy Spring by Thomas Ladson, who was the husband of one of our library, one of the principal donors to the library, and a longtime friend and supporter of the museum, and longtime member of the community. It's a special piece because it's so visually attractive. It's also got a neat little story. It was built before the First World War, and we know that because the metal fittings on it are bronze. And that would not have been the case once the war machine kicked up. All those metals had to go to munitions production. So we can date it very securely as before the First World War. One of the fascinating stories on the other side of the exhibit hall, in the back, the last piece, again connects to one of the fundamentally unique things about Sandy Spring. Quakers, as you may or may not know, believe very deeply in conversation. Conversation as a social phenomenon, as a spiritual phenomenon, as a religious experience. And this community has a 150-year-old history of getting together in family groups for conversation. There are 6 or 7 organized social clubs of 15 to 17 families that started meeting monthly in the 1870s, and they meet monthly to this day. They've passed those traditions on to successive generations and kept minutes of those meetings. So we have detailed household records going back 150 years of everything from what's blooming in the garden to how much rain, what diseases, who's born, who's died, what the issues are. Taken together, this is a record of social capital that is, I think, unduplicated anywhere in the United States. In the back here at the exhibit hall, there's an exhibit of a parlor, and the parlor is where these social clubs gathered in all the historic homes. And in fact, as the community has changed and people who didn't necessarily grow up in those homes have bought into those homes, the homes and the new families are incorporated into these social club circuits because the circuits want to go on meeting in these fabulous homes.
In our gift shop, we have artists that are local and also artists that are out of the area. And we're trying to produce here an all-American made craftsperson shop. Also, one thing that we do carry is children's toys, and they're made here in North Carolina, and they're toys that would have been used back in colonial times or in the 19th century. We also carry a large selection of books that are local or from local artists.
We have volunteer opportunities in the library and archives, at all of our special events, with our programming in our concert series. with our art committee. We have a garden club that works as volunteers to maintain our really wonderful landscaping and courtyard garden. Those are all available. We have administrative volunteers, we have education volunteers. There's no aspect of this program that doesn't welcome and reward volunteering.
When people come in to tell them about what we have, I really like doing that. And we do have some really nice things, and the history here is wonderful because there's just so much that happened here, and it's just wonderful.
The best place to find out about us is on the website, which is www.sandyspringmuseum.org, and we invite anyone to come and look. If you don't find what you want on the website, give us a call. There are a lot of reasons that history is important in the ongoing life of a community. One of them is a kind of spiritual one, that people who grow without history grow in a kind of thin soil. It's a little harder to fully develop your spirit and your identity if you don't know where you come from. But the deeper reason for this community is that we are in the middle of a huge population change, from people who grew up here to people who mostly didn't grow up here. And the question for this museum and the question for me is, can we take these long traditions that are in the soil of Sandy Spring for innovation, for social leadership, for progressive thinking, for the willingness to make big changes, starting with slavery and going from there, and help today's community address the changes that we're facing? Can we give Montgomery County a sense that we have always faced change with our eyes open, with our hands out, with our arms around each other's shoulders, and try to go forward together toward the 21st century and what it's going to bring?
Where you are right now is in the middle of John Poole's General Store. It was built in 1793, and it was the first building in Poolesville, and it was the beginning of Poolesville. And Poolesville is still a little country town, but when he built the store, it was a deep woods. It was a crossroads, and his dad, John Poole, owned a plantation that was one corner of the crossroads. John Poole Jr. was 23, and his dad deeded him 15 acres along the road. And the road is actually the little gravel track in front of our building. It was called State Road 3. I don't know where State Road 1 and 2 are, but anyway, State Road 3 went from the Potomac River, the White's Ferry, Conrad's Ferry crossing over all the way to Georgetown. And he had the good idea of building a store right at the crossroads, and it was a success right away. I'm part of a local historic group called Historic Medley District. We own this building and the land around it, and in 1974 a group of people were concerned. There were about 27 men and women in the area, not just in Poolesville, who were concerned about this Upper County, the loss of old buildings and open spaces. And so they formed this nonprofit organization and purchased the John Poole House and the grounds and refurbished this, rehabilitated this. It had been a lovely house, a very nice little house, but they went scratching under the plaster and under the laths and found an old whitewashed log store that was the store that had been in the early records. We found an inventory of merchandise that was in the will of John Poole Jr.'s mother-in-law. He must have used it as some sort of bond for something, but in any case, we have some idea of what the inventory was. We're standing in the original store. It was an 8 log, which means it's about 1 story tall. Log building. Inside it's about 18 by 18 feet wide. And the room behind it is, this room was built in 1793. And then the room behind it is a little bit older. It was built in the early 1800s, around 1803. And then in the 1860s, they doubled the size of this building with 2 rooms downstairs and 1 more room upstairs. And those rooms we use as a gift shop and as an office. The room above us was built, we're not sure quite when, but very early on. We think John Poole probably built this room, which is the original store, and then added the 4 more logs above us, and that allowed room for a 2nd story where someone could sleep. And then he put in box stair to get upstairs. This was the first post office in Poolesville in 1810. The first post office in Montgomery County was in Brookville in 1804. But when Benjamin Franklin set up the postal system, this was one of the postals. Before that, people did deliver mail, and we have a letter board where travelers coming through would leave off a letter for someone going the other direction to pick up and take back to their loved one or to their boss or to whomever. And then if they saw a letter, for instance, if they were heading toward Leesburg, they would pick up messages marked Leesburg, and they would haul them off to Leesburg. And the message board worked really well, so we've kept that up. This shop is a conglomeration. Originally, when we started the shop in 1974 as a museum of a general store, we used the original inventory. But over the years, our Historic Medley members have brought in other items that they thought would be of interest to us, so we have added them to the shop. But from the original inventory, we have things like soap, and we have what's called good soap and bad soap. And bad soap was laundry soap that was made of lye, and that's what you got your mouth washed at with. And good soap is made out of beeswax, and that was a cosmetic soap. So the shop had a wide variety. The other thing we have is, well, we have something of everything, but we have coffee. We have luxury items. We have hams that are hanging. We have crockery that is used for preservation. And to my right are old crocks that are covered with animal skins, and that's how pickles and other things were preserved against varmints and insects and things like that. I'm holding in my hand a twist of tobacco, which would have been not a luxury item, but certainly a necessity for the travelers who would probably have just been running out of tobacco when they got to this store and been very glad that they would have some for their pipe before they moved off to the Potomac River. This room was built for Dennis Lackland, who was the manager who took over from John Poole when John Poole Jr. went off to get married and go back to being a farmer. And Dennis Lackland had 4 children, so they built one more room. It was built about 1803. And then over the fireplace and all around the room are artifacts that were dug or stored in the Poolesville area from the Civil War. And then illustrations from Harper's that relate to Poolesville. Historic Medley, HMD, has a number of field trips. We've always been very interested in education, and we have regular field trips, a day in a one-room schoolhouse to the Seneca Schoolhouse. And then we also provide field trips here. HMD has always been really interested in the education, teaching people about old buildings and about history. And because we think old buildings teach about history. So we have a regular field trip for kids to the Seneca Schoolhouse Museum that occurs all through the school year. And then we have field trips by appointment to the John Poole House. And here, Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts and Brownies and whomever can come and learn to cook cornbread on a hearth in the back, learn about molasses, learn about old food, and then also can learn how to run an old general store, how to keep a ledger, how to write with a beautiful copper plate hand. And it's just a day going back in time. The lure for children here is that they actually know a lot of history. So they'll come out here and recognize things that they've read about or seen in movies. They'll see the real thing. And then but the other thing is they come out here and they have to figure out what things are. There are a lot of things here that they won't recognize, that they've heard about it and never actually seen. And so one of the things, for instance, is tobacco. Leaf tobacco, they know about it, but some of them guess what it is and some don't. It's always open by appointment for groups. And then weekends it's open Saturdays and Sundays from 12 to 5. There is no admission charge, and there is a box that you can slip a coin in. We're always happy for donations because we are completely nonprofit. This little store is supported by the membership and completely by donations, with the addition of the gift shop. That helps too. We have a number of events. The most notable is probably the art show in September. We are open for Heritage Days, for the Heritage Weekends at the end of June. We're open in the Christmas holidays with a craft show. Then we often have, from time to time, we have reenactors come and use our yard as a site, and then we have special events here. People come and have their weddings in our arboretum. I should also mention the grounds for this building are what is called the Stock Arboretum, and it is a collection of heritage plants, plants that were indigenous to Montgomery County before 1850. And it's both of interest to the botanical scholar and to people who just want to see interesting plants, and also old familiar plants that they didn't realize were here before they were. And it's a lovely setting for weddings and parties. One of the interesting things about the John Poole House is that the collection is always changing. Some things stay, you'll recognize them from previous visits, but we always have people donating things. We are rearranging it all the time because even though the store is a museum, it's also an active store. The store is certainly 200 years old, but our HMD's communication is a little bit more up to date. We have a website, we have an email address, and we have a phone number where you can reach us. And we hope we'll hear from you or you'll come visit. But once you get here, you will be really glad you're here. There's something here for everybody. We have lots of things for the children to see. We have very, very nice antiques that are part of our collection, and a lot of information about how people lived in the 1790s. It has as much colonial history in it as an entire trip to Williamsburg in substantially less time and in a much smaller space.